Ben,
Carol,
when we,
I was
Ben,
going to
when
ask.
we,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead, Sandy.
no, I was just going to ask if when I restart, do you want to do the introduction of Carol Gary?
Yeah,
Schneider?
and that's great. And Carol, do you want to check your audio and camera? Make sure we can hear and see you in the list. Carol, are you able to make yourself heard and seen? Maybe not yet, or maybe she's stepped away. Let's hold on. Let's hold on a minute. Guthrie, have you heard from Carol? I see her on the list. See her as a guest or as a presenter. Let's see. Well, let's hold tight for a moment till we know that she is able to present. See if I have a way of contacting her.
And she knows our schedule, correct?
She does. This was set for her timing. Carol Gary Schneider, are you there? Strange. Let me see.
Ben, I just got an email from her.
Okay.
And it says
that she's having audio issues, so I'll be following up with her briefly.
Okay. Can we go ahead with the workforce and talent development report, or does that throw everything off too much, Ben?
You know, I assume that those guests, those are invited guests who I doubt are.
Oh, I see that now.
Line.
I thought it was, yeah, I was assuming a
that's...
mistake. Okay, let's wait for her. We'll still need to wrap up this session.
Yes, at 1:30.
Right, at 1:30.
Yep.
Ah.
Carol, I'm sorry we're still not hearing or seeing you, although you now loom large, your box on our screens, but there's nothing in it. Sorry about the audio.
Your microphone is showing that it's muted. I don't know if you can access it. She might have the same fondness for Teams that I do.
Ben, while we wait, might we jump forward to another staff item?
Yeah, possibly, although looking through here, I mean, it's really only the items 11.3 and 12.1 that are possibilities, and I don't know whether we have Rowan or Kaya on the line. I know Kaya it looks like she is, although I don't know whether she's ready to go.
I'm here. I am here and ready to go.
Oh, that's Rakaya. Hi, Rakaya. Hey, we're happy you're ready to go, and if you want to fill the time, we're all ears.
We're all ears.
Oh, there was another Aya. Oh, I see. Okay, great.
It looks like Kaya is present as well and ready to present.
Yeah, she said she could present. She just needs a couple of minutes. Sorry about this, folks. Just technical challenges here coming back from lunch. I also know Carol is on the road. She's at the SHIO policy conference, I believe, that I mentioned early in the meeting. So maybe
I'm getting a call from her, Ben. I'm going to try to troubleshoot.
Okay, please hold on, folks.
Thank you for your patience. People who are on this call and waiting.
Guthrie, any sign of progress? If not, I think we will jump to Kaya for item 12.1.
I think Guthrie's still,
Yes, I'm still on the phone. If we could just jump to Kaya briefly.
Okay, let's do that. Kaya, thank you so much for your flexibility. Chair Rowe, do you want to, I guess, call the meeting back to order or do whatever it takes to get us going, and then we'll go to 12.1.
Yes, I'm looking for 12.1 on my agenda. Yes, the meeting's back in session. And Kaya, you are presenting on temporary rule amendment for relating to aligning degree authorization. Is that correct? And you're on mute. Oops, I'm still not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Cross and Vice Chair Heyman and Commissioners. My name is Kaya Sorensen, and I am the Deputy Director for Private Post-Secondary Education at the HECC. And I am here to talk to you about docket item 12.1, which is a temporary rule amendment to OAR 583-030-0010. The proposed amendment will align our degree authorization exemption rules with our exemption statute. This rule details the conditions that must be met for possible exemption from degree authorization for private institutions in Oregon. However, the rule without amendment contradicts statute, and the proposed amendment detailed in the docket item 12.1A will ensure alignment. We believe a temporary rule filing is justified in this matter, pending the permanent rulemaking process, because failure to act could result in institutions spending unnecessary time and resources pursuing an exemption which is not authorized under statute. This is an action item, and we recommend voting to approve the proposed temporary rules. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Can we have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed temporary rules as presented in docket item 12.1A.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand or both.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
How are we doing, Guthrie?
Still working, Chair. And if you wouldn't mind repeating for the record, who moved and approved on that last motion, just as I'm trying to run live tech support as well?
Yes, Richard moved, and was it Commissioner Smith who seconded?
Simnett.
She's saying no.
Just
Oh,
Simnett.
Simnett. Seconded. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Sorry, I was trying to wave my hand and unmute the mic at the same time. It was me.
Okay, just let me check back with
And if not, can we go ahead with any of the items under 11? Ben?
I don't think
I know they kind of go together.
so.
Okay.
Well, it's not that as much as it is our guests who were given approximate times for their participation. I'm checking on Rowan, who is HECC staff, but I don't believe has joined the call yet.
Well, if we can get her on, she's going to have 30 minutes. Because I don't want us to throw the whole afternoon schedule off. And I don't want to cut short the discussion on the strategic plan.
Right, if we can get Carol on.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say we, Madam Chair, my suggestion is that yeah, go ahead, Guthrie.
we're almost there.
Okay.
She's rejoined.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Ah,
Right. Hurrah.
we hear you.
Can
And
you
we see
me?
you.
Okay.
Um,
I'm so sorry for disrupting things, and I will be quiet until I know you went to another agenda. So, okay.
I'll just,
Then do the introduction, please.
yeah, very, very quickly. You have Dr. Gary Schneider's bio in your packet under docket item 8.0. Really pleased that she's able to join us this afternoon to present information about this coalition that she helped create and that we are beginning to participate in. And I'm hopeful that her presentation will leave enough time before 1:30 to at least get a little bit of feedback from commissioners on your sense of our potential participation in the work that she'll describe and other thoughts that you may have. But Carol's done a terrific job of setting up this organization and engaging folks from around the country in the work. And I look forward to her presentation this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to you, Carol.
Okay, go through the next slide, please. So I realize we have less time than I had expected, and I do want to let you pose questions and talk with me, as Ben has just said. So 4 big topics: the big picture, a democracy that is in need of repair. I think we don't need further exploration of that. There's half the country, whatever happens with the next election, will believe that what happened was terrible, and that's indicative of how deeply divided we are. There's a big opportunity. Higher education has always had a civic mission, and the Civic Learning and Democracy Engagement Coalition that I'm part of and the work it's doing is intended to revive that mission. We see state systems as key players in this, and I'll be talking a little bit about that. I also want to talk, what are we actually talking about? If we say that students should be participating in college civic and democracy learning, what does that mean? I'll show you some snapshots from a forthcoming report that we will be releasing later this month. And then I'll try to connect what I'm talking about to the priority in your own strategic plan for streamlining pathways for students. That's one of your 4 goals, at least as I read the plan. Guthrie, next slide. Next slide. So just a couple of snapshots. I'll go to younger people. Some 40% of Americans under age 30 are pessimistic about the state of our democracy. Only 1/4 are somewhat or very optimistic. And in another question that I've cited here right at the top of the slide, only 14% of Americans say democracy is working for me. So that's a few snapshots of where we are. Next slide, please. And the policy context. There is a civic learning movement in higher education. It's been active for decades, but it has not been a policy priority. So I put on this slide something from another state system, which once had a slogan of get a degree, get a job, give back, and then switched its slogan to get a degree, get a job, get ahead. And you see the shift from thinking about what we give to the community as a result of our college education to the notion of higher education as a privatized benefit. Next slide, please. There's the civic learning movement has been active long enough that there is evidence about what happens when students participate in different kinds of hands-on civic learning. And I sent you a handout in advance. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I recommend that you do. It shows you the synthesis of a study of a synthesis of high quality studies showing how students benefit. But from other sources, we know that only 2 out of 10 community college students take any civic related courses during their entire time in community college. And when it comes to four-year institutions, 40% of seniors say they never took a course that had a community-based project. And here I am emphasizing courses. The question is civic part of the student's curriculum, what they think they're doing to get a degree? And the answer for many students is no. Next slide, please. But as I said before, there is a huge opportunity, and that opportunity comes with the new patterns of college going in our society. Today, I mean, we talk about the United States as a democracy. We the people are the first words in our Constitution. And today, for the first time in our history, a decisive majority of we the people are enrolling in post-secondary education. Lumina tracks this, and they report that over 52% of adults now hold either degrees or credentials. As you probably know, I'm sure you talk about this, there are 40 million Americans with some college and no degree. That's 19% of the population. If you put that together, 7 out of 10 people, adult people in our society are coming to higher education, whether it's 2 or 4 year, public or private. And that is a huge opportunity. And the coalition and the multi-state collaborative that Ben spoke about are part of our effort to seize that opportunity and to renew our democracy by helping our institutions invest in making civic learning inclusive, not just available, but inclusive. But to date, for all the opportunity, data, there's no bigger theme in the SHIO conference that I'm attending right now than data and evidence. Every session is about data and evidence, but state systems are not collecting their evidence on what students are getting out of college education, civic education. There is evidence that you could use, and I'll talk about that later, but the fact of the matter is state systems haven't been garnering it. So that's a synthesis of the high quality research studies. There were only 53 of them to synthesize, which is astounding when you think that there are millions of students in American higher education. Next slide, please. So it's in this context that we formed the Civic Learning and Democracy Engagement Coalition. I am not going to talk about what it does. It's in the handout. You can take a look. Guthrie, if you go over the next 2 slides quickly, because I want to go to the multi-state collaborative. Yes, right here. Back one. The multi-state collaborative. As we looked at where we were, this coalition took a look at where we were as a nation in terms of our commitment to civic learning and democracy engagement for college students. We realized that there were at least 4 systems that had already, in different ways, made a commitment to civic learning for all students. And then as we've looked further, we discovered that there are several more. So we began to gather these state systems in what we call the multi-state collaborative for college civic learning and democracy engagement. And the coalition sees the multi-state, which you have just joined, as its most important priority for trying to reach that great majority of we the people who are actually coming to higher education. So there are now 14 state systems that have joined this multi-state coalition. They include CUNY and SUNY on the East Coast and Maryland. They include Virginia, Kentucky, Utah, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Hawaii, Wisconsin, each of them is using different approaches but all of them are in different ways, saying that civic learning should be part of what students do in college and exploring how they can provide that kind of learning for more of their students. The priorities for the multi-state are on the handout that I sent in advance. You can take a look at them for yourself. Next slide, please. So now we come to a new tool that the coalition has put together that MSC members can use. And it's intended to answer the question, what are you talking about? What do you mean by this? What's involved in college civic learning? Is it one course on US government? And our answer to that is it's much more than that. It includes knowledge, it includes skills, it includes practical experience, students actually doing something related to a problem that matters to the community, matters to democracy. And our argument is it ought to be part of their careers. This shouldn't be separate from what they think they're in college for. There should be civic and ethical opportunities in the actual fields of study that they see as career related. I'm going to come back to this in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted you to see that big picture. Next slide, Guthrie. So all of this is part of a new report that we are releasing at the end of the month called Every Student, Every Degree, College Civic Learning for Today's Students and Tomorrow's Democracy. Next slide, please. There's a virtual seminar that you can take part in if you want to know more. It starts on September 4th and continues again, part 2 on October 1st. Here is one slide I wanted you to see from this new report. So we know this was from a study of in state systems, Montana, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Tennessee, 24,000 students. And the study was really looking at what students were getting out of participation in so-called high impact practices. And they include research, collaborative learning, learning communities, service learning, and so on. And then this is from NSSE data, National Study of Student Engagement. They correlated students' participation in these with particular scales that NSSE also has, including, I want you to look at the practical learning scale. So the question is, did college give you significant gains in acquiring job or work-related knowledge and skills, working effectively with others, a code of ethics, understanding people of other backgrounds, solving complex real-world problems, being an informed and active citizen? All of the high-impact practices give you boosts on those practical learning skills, but service learning gives you twice as much of a boost as any of the others. When students participate in doing something for their communities, they feel like they are becoming informed and active citizens, but they also feel like they're developing a whole suite of job skills that you know and I know employers are really looking for. Next slide, please. So go to the next one. So as we put this civic learning framework together, we were talking with leaders all over the country, and we were drawing on what we knew about what employers value as well. The idea was that there were different meanings of civic learning. For some students, it's all about, I'm sorry, for some faculty, it is all about students developing a sense of voice, power, that they can make a difference in their community. And we said, yes, that's the point. Purposeful civic engagement ought to be the goal of this college civic learning while students are making their way through their programs. Students should have an opportunity to reflect on who they are, what their experiences have been, whether they think democracy is working well for them or not, and over time, what kind of role do they themselves want to take in our communities. Some of them will go into public service careers. Some of them will be voters. Some of them may decide to be disengaged. This is their choice. But the idea is they have to think about it while they're in college. Next slide. The framework centers democracy. One of the things we know from really studying what's going on in the civic learning movement is that we have much more work going on in practical experience, having students do things in the community, than we have going on in relation to democracy, and especially what democracy could be. Its ideals, its aspirations, the notion that we are an experiment and we've been disagreeing with one another, often not too well, over the centuries about what freedom means, what liberty means, what we are trying to do to create that more perfect union. So this framework centers democracy, but also the levers for change. How do we actually change our democracy? How do we make it work better so that everyone is included? It connects engagement across difference, that's the yellow quadrant, with problem-solving skills. We're not just listening to one another, we need to learn to solve problems together. It values practical experience, but it also values collaborative learning from those practical experiences. And as I said before, it connects civic and ethical inquiry in students' career fields to what they are learning about how to make a more just and inclusive society. How do they bring those values into the workplace as well as into their community? Next slide, please. So this goes to the comments I made before about connecting this work with the work you're doing on streamlining students' pathways. Now, I know that part of that means from one institution to another, but here we have a pathway design which is purposeful about the learning in those pathways from first to final year. Those of you who know Portland State's work will recognize some similarities that Portland State is introducing in the first year, a first year inquiry program, complex problems. Second year inquiry, students choose an issue they want to work on across 3 interdisciplinary courses or multidisciplinary courses outside their major in their upper level work. And at Portland State, the community-based practicum is actually the required culminating work, so that students they're given an opportunity to ask during their studies, what do I care about? What's a problem I want to work on? And then they go in depth into it as they go on through their studies. And then they do a collaborative project in which they try to actually apply their knowledge to the service of the community. Next slide, and then I will finish up so that we can talk. This is the one that we put together for this report. It focuses on the 2-year programs, and it especially focuses on 2-year programs that don't have general education. And many of your career and technical programs either have very little or none at all. So the idea is that students are wrestling with civic questions, with problems that need to be solved, with different points of view about those problems within their program of study, whatever it is. We were talking the other night at a meeting at a session of the SHIO meeting about students going into real estate and being introduced to the history of redlining. Why are some communities more advantaged, more disadvantaged in terms of their housing patterns? How does that affect what you're going to be doing as a real estate agent? What are some problems we need to solve to make sure that everyone has equal access to the best possible housing for them? So that's the idea, that we're weaving this into the curriculum, that it's a pathway notion, that it's not just one course. Ideally, there should be a course about democracy, but whether there is or not, there are other ways that we can be working to solve problems together as students make their way through the college curriculum. So you can take down the slides and let's just talk.
Thank you. Questions, commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Devlin. Were you getting ready to jump in?
I was looking to see if you needed somebody to ask a question.
Oh,
I could ask a couple.
And tell me what your role is, if you would, please.
I'm a member of the commission.
I know, but in your life.
Oh, I was a long time state legislator.
Okay, thank you.
When you look at our requirements, even on the secondary level, not post-secondary, they're kind of minimal. And while U.S. history is often one of them, and there is a little bit more, I don't think there's much that gives a student even a basic understanding of the structure of government, or even on the federal level, the 3 different, the judiciary and the legislative and the executive. So at the university level, you'd be getting, if they're Oregon students, probably most state students, you'll be getting students with very little civic education at the secondary level. How do you address that? I mean,
well, in the ideal world, which I'm better positioned to envision than to enact, as you are thinking as a commission about where you want to go in Oregon higher education, you start with what you just said about what the expectations are in the schools and whether or not you can be helpful in strengthening those without without promoting the assumption that a course on US government is all they need, or US history. I'm an historian, and I know that US history is not taught in a way that frequently that allows students to go deep into the aspirations of democracy, the contestations we've been having over what kind of a democracy we want to be from the day we were founded and before. So you want to solidify, you want to join forces, and the coalition has joined forces with K-12 reform. Civics is a big player in that. And we are very much in favor of significantly strengthening both history and civics at the school level. But we think it's a mistake for a democracy to communicate to 7 out of 10 adult Americans that once you're out of school, you can just forget about all that, because higher education is only about jobs. And so we have looked for examples of threading civic questions together with the job preparation that students do absolutely need and deserve as they go to college. Does that speak to your question?
Yes, to some degree. I think the difficulty being is that, legislatures tend to put a lot of requirements on post-secondary education and trying to balance those requirements. But this would seem to be a very basic area. I mean, another area that has been emphasized that doesn't have too much to do with civic involvement, but is financial literacy.
Mm-hmm,
and it's taken interest there decades to even get that as even a minor portion of the curriculum for high school students.
Yeah.
But I do think that I am always surprised when I run into someone who has an incredibly lengthy post-secondary education, particularly some of the I won't pick an area that'd be getting me in trouble. Who knows so little about the government that they talk about?
Yeah, it's true. What I used to be the president of the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and we would commission focus groups for us. And I remember commissioning a focus group of people who worked in federal agencies around this issue some years ago. And a whole lot of the people who worked in those agencies actually taught on the side at GW and American University and Georgetown University. And they were just uniformly shocked by how little their students knew about US democracy. And also, I might add, how poorly they wrote. So, but part of our argument is you do require 2 semesters of writing now at the college level for most of your post-secondary students. That may not be true for your students in technical programs. It often isn't. But if they're in an associate program or applied studies or a BS program, they have to take two semesters of writing. They could be writing about problems that matter to the community, to democracy, their own experience in democracy. They could be practicing that civil discourse that is so much desired now by talking about the different meanings of democracy itself to different people who are differently positioned in our society. So by tweaking the courses we're already requiring, we can in fact go deeper into the questions of where we want to be. What is tomorrow's democracy going to be? Will there be tomorrow's democracy? So, and we can do it globally as well as in terms of the US. We are the world's most influential democracy, and democracy is on the decline. Freedom House, which tracks this, has tracked, that was on my first slide, 18 years of decline, so that fewer people are living in democratic societies now than were 18 years ago. And many societies, including our own, that once had very high scores, one of their criteria is, do people trust your elections? Before I came on this call, I checked that again. Fully 38% of Americans do not think the last presidential election was just. 38%. So that's why we're tweaked in Freedom House's tracking of democracies around the globe. Other questions?
Commissioner Hayman?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, in previous life, I was a 9th grade civics teacher.
Okay.
They don't exist anymore.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I appreciate your shift, the phrase, from giving back to getting ahead. I think that is a cultural shift that needs to be readdressed. And I just, education is designed at this point around metrics, and we don't have any metrics in the area of civic understanding. So I think, I think in order to achieve much of what you're suggesting, we need to figure out how we incorporate some metrics in this area so that instead of dictating how people do this, which you've indicated you're not at all, but that we create the expectation that they would do this in some way. And I think that's critical. As you were talking, I just think I'm old. So, I lament that today, if John F. Kennedy gave his great speech, he'd be brushed off.
Yeah, that's true. So Emily, I don't know who you are. I'm looking at you, but you look as though you might be another generation. I'm wondering what you're thinking of this.
I've done a lot of things in life, but yeah.
Commissioner Simnett?
Thank you. And thank you for thank you, Chair Rowe, and thank you for your presentation. I am just by way of introduction, I do teach one of those required writing classes. I'm a writing faculty at the University of Oregon, and I'm older than I look.
Okay. I'm confident you're younger than I am.
And I just in a previous life, I worked as a journalist for a newspaper. I've covered legislature, but also city council meetings. So I have a lot of experience in doing community-based work professionally, and then continuing to do that in teaching writing. So I'm really intrigued by what you're presenting and what you're talking about. I wholeheartedly agree with it. It strikes me, as you were saying, making your suggestions about, just as an example of what could happen in a writing class, is that what you described is happening in many of the writing classes at my institution, and I have a hunch that that's happening around the state. What might not be happening, or what could be happening, is a better description of that connection to help students see what they are learning and to make those connections. I think it would be, faculty, the faculty that I work with are impassioned about democracy and are, really want to help students be able to participate in writing and communication. But I think not having a shared language across the state makes it less apparent that some of the work that is already happening. So I guess I would just be interested in ways that we could highlight where this is already happening, but might not be named as such,
Yes.
and amplify that for students and for communities.
And thank you for saying all that. I would love to talk to you for an hour rather than just 2 minutes. But I was part of this big project that I mentioned before in Montana, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Tennessee to embed high impact practices equitably in the curriculum so that everybody would participate. And it just became extremely clear to me as I monitored that program that the state systems needed to take the lead in helping the institutions tag the courses that were civic intentional, or whatever the thing was, or research intentional, that there was no way we were going to be able to track the equity of participation without knowing where it was actually happening. So I realize you're a coordinating board, you don't have governing authority, but it may be that you could find a coalition of institutions that were willing to tag their courses and see which ones of the writing courses are civic intentional. Come up with some criteria of your own, obviously, and then begin to track what difference it makes to have been in one of those courses to students' perception that they have a role to play in making a better tomorrow for our society. How are we doing on time? I know that
we've still got a few minutes. I have a question. I'm by way of background, a lifelong journalist and editor.
okay.
And I'm interested in the barriers, even if everyone agrees this should be done and would be tremendously beneficial, the barriers in terms of both university independence, faculty governance, legislative reluctance to mandate classes because of those two things. It just seems like the barriers to making significant progress on this, unless it's institution by institution choosing to do it, just seem inordinately high.
There's no question that trying to move the entire flotilla of higher education in a state in a particular direction is a challenge. Absolutely, that is absolutely true. At the same time, part of my advice would be to the institutions to begin to audit your own strengths in this. That's one of the ways that framework can be used. You know, do you have strength in what you're doing now in the democracy area, in the practical experience area, in the bridge building area, in the relating it to careers? So there may be departments at an institution that are already very intentional about getting students into the community as part of their degree requirements. Does the institution know who they are, which departments those are, which faculty have led on that? So beginning to, what I know from years and years and years of working in educational reform when I was at AAC&U is this, that there are reform movements and most of the people working on these feel like they are ignored. So there are on every campus lots of people, as Emily has just said, who are already doing this in their writing courses, in their economics courses, in their diversity and gender courses, many courses. But have they been recognized? Have they been brought together to ask how we can do even more? What do we know about what we're getting out of this? How could we know? So that you begin to identify the people who have already been quiet champions and bring them together to see what can be done. And it's not uncommon, especially in larger institutions, for some fraction of the faculty to agree to pilot something before we and collect data on it before we see whether or not everyone wants to do that. So I think there are ways forward, and that the only way forward on this is through the curriculum. You're just never going to get the kind of civic engagement you want if it's entirely done by volunteers who almost, by definition, the student who has time to volunteer in an unpaid way in the community probably does not come from a high need family. I know intergenerational poverty is one of your concerns. So we need to find ways for students to get credit for what they are doing and to have opportunities to reflect on what they're learning from what they're doing. So I think it is feasible. I know it's feasible. The question is what strategy would work best for Oregon?
Yep. Thank you very much for being here with us. We appreciate it, and glad you got the technical problems worked out.
I'm so sorry about that.
It happens to all of us. Don't worry about it.
Chair Rowe, before Carol goes, if I could just talk about a potential next step.
Okay.
As Carol mentioned, the HECC, I, on behalf of the commission, have begun to participate in this multi-state collaborative, and that included attending a convening a couple of months ago in the Midwest with leaders from other states, and with our own Jessica Howard, president of Portland Chemeketa Community College, and also national board chair for Campus Compact. And Jessica and I returned home from that event, really excited about the idea of convening leaders and practitioners and students from across Oregon institutions who are already sort of engaged in this work to share in sort of what they're doing, talk about what kind of support they could use to, to extend that, and try to build some momentum, drawing on, again, the great work that's already occurring across Oregon institutions. So we have the two of us, along now with the provost at Portland State University, have begun to design a potential, probably half-day or three-quarters day event that could be held in early 2025. And, we'll look for feedback from their colleagues, from our colleagues, potentially from you, on, the shape that day could take and what might come out of it. But that, again, I think that's a potential tangible next step. We'll share more as that develops, but I don't want you to think that this is just a one-time conversation that we'll never talk about again. I also am hopeful that what you've heard and learned from Carol this afternoon may help inform and invigorate your work around the incorporation of kind of democratic participation, civic engagement principles or priorities or values within your new strategic plan, which we will be turning to in a moment. We've attempted, I think your planning team has attempted to reflect some of the commission's prior commitments or expectations along those lines in the draft that we'll be reviewing, but certainly welcome, of course, additional feedback. And I think this presentation and Carol's work on this topic provides some of that inspiration and scaffolding for how we can may be able to move this forward as a state. So join you, Chair Rowe, in expressing real appreciation for Carol, who, as you can see, just brings really masterful understanding of American higher education and experience with this work to her leadership of this coalition. So thanks.
Thank you. And Ben, I will send you a preview copy of this report, because if you're in the midst of your strategic planning, there may be other things in it that you would like to take a look at. So I will send you your own private copy. You can share it with your colleagues. Thank you so much, and good luck to you in your work.
Thank you very much.
Delighted to be working with you.
Okay. Now we are going to move on to strategic planning. As we get started, I want to welcome back our friends from Coraggio. We will see who all's here. I'm not even sure who all's on my list, so you can reintroduce yourselves. Just by way of introduction, I want you to know, colleagues, commissioners, that I saw the draft that you're seeing for the very first time when you saw it. I was very encouraged to see it and for the substance of it and a lot of the clarity. And before we get started, though, I wanted to really thank Greg Heyman and Emily Simnett and Arnell Fajardo, who couldn't be here today, who were the representatives for us on the commission on this and attended the meetings and put a great deal of thought and work into it. So as we all start to discuss it and have our own thoughts on it, please, the three of you, pipe up even more, because we might need your context to know what we're looking at and to make sure we're not going off the rails. Also, I want to mention right now, as we give feedback on this, which, as you see in the material, is programmed right in, I want to help us stay at a fairly high altitude on this. As the chief wordsmither and lifelong editor, I'm going to restrain myself. Our job is not to do any word editing on this. Our job is to see if what we're stating is substantive enough, if it's at the right altitude, if there are things that are left out. So we want to make sure we're ambitious enough and specific enough. And the team at Coraggio will take our words and put them probably into even more understandable words. So anyway, I really look forward to this and don't want to delay us anymore. It's all yours.
Right. Thank you, Chair Rowe. We're so excited to be back in front of this group. We've had such an amazing time so far working with this planning team and with this commission on crafting the strategic plan. So I will share my screen. So Susan and I, you've seen the draft of the plan a little bit, and thank you, Chair Rowe, for such great instruction. This is exactly what we're here to do. It's to review what's been done so far, make sure we're heading in the right direction, and to get all of your very important feedback in the process. Can everyone see my slides okay? All right, wonderful, good, I'm seeing nods. All right, just a little overview of where we'll go today. So quick project recap, and you're all very familiar, but we'll just touch on it just to kind of ground us in where we are in the overall process. Then we'll look over vision, mission, and values as a group, and have a little bit of discussion on things that ways we might be able to improve it. And then we'll go through each goal one by one and its outcomes and strategies and talk about those a little bit more in depth. And then we'll talk about what we'll do for the next steps. So in the overall timeline, we did our get clear phase where we did the needs assessment and the survey, and we got all of that information and turned that into a situation assessment to guide the planning team as we went into planning. So the core planning team, after the strategic clarity retreat we did with you all, they went into work sessions and have come up with the draft that we have today. So this week, all of this week, Susan and I are conducting feedback sessions with some of our parties of interest to make sure that we had contacted earlier and some new ones to see, so they could see the results of their earlier input and how we've incorporated it into the plan. And so that's what this session is today as well. After this session and after this week, we'll complete all of those feedback sessions, and then the planning team will once again convene into on September 9th for a revision session based on all of the feedback we received this week. And then we'll deliver a final strategic plan. And just to orient ourselves to the structure of the strategic plan, so we have our strategic clarity elements where we say what's the vision, what's the ideal state that we're trying to, that we aspire to. And the mission, what is our purpose as the HECC? What are we here to do? What are the values that shape the way we show up at work, the way we come to our work? And then the strategic focus and action pieces, the goals. What are those big buckets of work that need to be accomplished over the next 5 years? Outcomes, how will we measure success? You will notice that the outcomes in this draft plan, they're not SMART goals yet. We haven't added the measurables because they're still in draft form. So just know that that is coming. And then the strategies, what finite duration discretionary projects or programs will we take on as we move everything forward? So in this discussion, I just wanted to give some suggested community agreements. I think we did this the last time as well. So I'm just going to give you a minute to just absorb and see if these fit for everyone. We just want to make sure that we're allowing ourselves to step up and talk and make sure that everyone gets a chance to contribute, to be curious, and to the point about wordsmithing, we don't need to let perfect be the enemy of good. We just want to make sure that we are really going in the right direction and hitting the right notes. I'll just give you a minute to read through those. Does anyone have any questions before we dive in? I can see some of you. Okay. All right. Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm going to pass it over to Susan. We'll talk about vision, mission, and values.
Thanks, Colleen. Can everyone hear me okay? Just want to make sure my mic is working. Perfect. Thank you. So just a quick reminder and I know that we may have said this before when we were all with you, I think it was back in May. When we think about the vision, it's the big why. It should be aspirational, inspirational. It should be bold. These were the guidelines that the work group, the strategic planning work group, used as they were looking at the draft vision that I believe that you all had input in and have been working on for quite some time. So just remember, vision's your big why. Next slide, please, Colleen. Your mission starts to narrow that down. It says specifically, what is the purpose for the HECC? And it should be action-oriented, should describe the primary focus of work, and it should solve a part of that vision. It doesn't have to solve the entire vision. So just keep that in mind. And your values are the specific beliefs that shape how to carry out that work of the vision and the mission. And so just keep that in mind as you're looking at the drafts. Vision's the big why. The mission's the what does HECC do in service to that? And then your values are the specific beliefs or behaviors you'd be hoping to see as you're interacting with each other and with others. So with that context, Colleen, if you can go to the next slide. And I believe you've all received these in advance, but here's the updated draft vision mission that we're going to look for feedback from you all on. I'm not going to read it, but I'll give you all a moment to take in the vision and mission. Colleen, let's go to the values. I'll also ask Colleen to put those in the chat so everyone can see them, both the vision, mission, and values. Thanks, Colleen, if you're able to do that. If you're not able to do that, let me know and I'll do my best to get them in the chat. There we go. Thank you. So here's the updated values. The way the values are structured, there's a big bold word that kind of describes it is. It says what the HECC believes and how they would see it show up. So it's kind of the way to read each value is the word, what the HECC believes, and how it might show up. So take a moment to look at these updated values.
Greg has his hand
Okay, thank you. Greg, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, just a quick question based on some feedback we got earlier this week. Is there any way to preface this section so that people don't inappropriately assume priority based on the ordinal relationship of the values?
It's a great call out. Thank you, Greg. I'll state it here, but I'll also reinforce it in upcoming feedback sessions that we have scheduled that these are not in any particular order of priority value. So thank you for calling that out, Greg, and appreciate that to make sure everybody understands that. I see Commissioner Adams.
Hi, thank you to the team that's worked on this. This is really awesome. I really appreciated the explanation in the deck as well. I had one observation at a strategic level, Chair Rowe, about what I hope to see in either the mission, the vision, or the values, which is a clear statement about, I wouldn't say advocacy for students, but something that's student specific. And when I read all three, I didn't see, and it could be my misunderstanding about the statutory role of the HEC, but I expected a statement about advocating for or deeply understanding the interests of students, and I didn't see that. So I was wondering, and because it wasn't there, it made me think, I'm sure there was a discussion about it. So this is more a question than a request. How do you see that topic being addressed directly in the current draft? And did I miss it somewhere?
Thank you. I'd invite any of those that were sitting on the strategic planning work group to jump in if you feel comfortable answering the question right now. We may need to get back to you with a circle back on that answer if that's okay, if no one's comfortable sharing right now, if that's all right.
Absolutely. I just thought maybe I lost the thread in reading the deck, but I just felt like I expected to see some like clear statement. I loved the statement about civic responsibility and that was amazing. And then I think I just missed the view of the student.
Great, thank you. Would anybody like to jump in? That was part of the deeper discussions that were happening at the work group level.
I think that's a very good observation. I wasn't part of the work group. I think it's mentioned, my memory is that I saw it in one of the goals, but that is who we are here for. And so I agree that we really need to find a way to elevate that and make it clear, because we're sort of in the vision, envisioning the whole state and the result of what we do. But at least in that, we're not centering students in a way that's, really dramatically clear. So I would second that.
And I think, Chair Rowe, I would add that based on how we started this meeting, the space and regard that's given for the insight of the student lived experience, it just, to me, was something I thought, well, I wonder if there's a way we can make that statement.
Thank you so much for your feedback. You can see that Colleen's capturing notes live on the screen. Hopefully you're all able to see that. And just know that this feedback, in addition to all the feedback we're gathering this week during our feedback sessions, is going to be synthesized and shared back with the planning team for additional discussion and enhancements and improvements. So appreciate everyone's thought. Who else has something they'd like to share about the current drafts of the vision, mission, and values? And we got a lot of people, so if it's possible, please raise your hand so I know to call on you. Your feedback, vision, mission, values. Okay. We're gonna start looking at the goals. So we've got 5 goals. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the goals and the outcomes and the strategies. You'll have a few minutes to review them, and then we'll open them up for deeper dialogue and discussion. So here's goal number 1, and the big headline there is around relevance. Ensure that post-secondary educational experiences are relevant to learners' aspirations, employer, and community needs. You can see the associated outcomes for that goal. And again, as Colleen mentioned, they're not specific or measurable just yet because we're looking directionally, are they heading in the right direction? And then there's 4 strategies there. And the way to read the strategies, there's a big bold kind of headline and then a little bit more description around what it means. So take a moment and look at goal number 1 and the outcomes and the strategies, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and discussion. Chair Roll, thanks for getting us started.
Okay. I don't know if it belongs in this goal or another one, but in all of the goals, there's no specific mention of the technological advancement that we need to be even in society, and how a lot of that needs to be systemic. And then you layer AI on top of that. But I don't see in here how AI and huge technological advancements are helping drive our goals.
Thank you, Chair Roll. Appreciate you going first, getting us started, and sharing your thoughts and feedback. I think Jennifer Smith. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. I'm the newest commissioner, and so I don't have a lot of background on how, this process developed. And so, again, I'm hesitant to, step in where things might have already been resolved in other ways. But just based on our previous discussion, and again, this is sort of just a high level comment. It isn't really about this particular thing, but it maybe as an example. Our previous discussion where we had a presentation on developing civic and democratic values curriculum in our colleges, I see on the strategy, one of the strategies here is enhanced civic engagement. And Chair Rowe pointed out, well, it's very difficult to create mandate for our, colleges and universities where that isn't necessarily our role. So when something it says develop the programs needed to expand civic participation and community engagement as part of essential learning. I'm just wondering, bird's eye view, like how is that
Oh.
possible? Or is that within our purview, or just a little more background maybe on that as an example? I have no quibble really with that particular item, but just wondering about the level of command and control we have over things like that.
Got it. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Appreciate that. If Colleen is not capturing the essence of your, she might not be capturing word for word, but if it doesn't capture the essence of it, please just chime right in and help us make it better. Thank you for that.
It will not hurt my feelings, I promise.
Who else has thoughts, comments, feedback on this goal number 1? And Colleen, just the first one, I think Chair Rose said it was kind of overarching. So just if you can just make sure that that's indicated there, that was an overarching comment. Hi, Greg, I see your hand.
Yeah, quick. After reading this, I don't know, 10,000 times, I find the language behind expand learner aspirations not quite as clear as perhaps I hoped it would be. I think my interest, or the conversation's interest, was not how do we expand a learner's sense of what's possible as a part of their overall curriculum. I don't think that's good wording, but I think I go back to the sense of how do we increase social mobility, and well, we know that we limit our sense of what's possible based on our own cultural experience, and so how do we help people to see beyond that experience to what's possible for them? So it's I don't know what the language is there, but I didn't think that came through real clear in the way in which we currently have it worded. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And appreciate you calling out that, there was some deeper dialogue and conversation in the work group on this, and that's not quite landed yet, the intent of what that conversation was. So thank you for that. Chair Rowe, I see your hand.
Yes. I may be repeating some of what Greg said. I found goal 1, I guess I would call it softer or mushier than the other goals, just less specific. Even in understanding, I was very pleased that if it's going to be relevance, that we then are saying relevance, that then we're saying that it relates to learners' aspirations and employer and community needs. But that's sort of the whole ball of wax. So we get the learners in there first, but then we really get society and everything else. So I just wasn't clear, and I thought that this could be more specific. I understood it less than the others.
Great. Thank you, Chair Rowe. Appreciate the feedback. Any final feedback on this goal 1 before we go to goal 2? Okay, Colleen, if you don't mind sharing goal 2, we're going to keep the conversation going. Again, I'm going to give you a moment to read it, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and discussion. Goal 2 is all around alignment. Align Oregon's education and training systems to create seamless pathways for learners. You can see the outcomes there and strategies. No, the big X is just a placeholder for potential baseline data and information to make the goals smart. So please don't be confused by the missing percentage and the X in that first outcome. Take a moment to review goal 2, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and discussion. Okay, Commissioner Smith, thanks for getting us started. We'll go to the next slide where Colleen can capture notes. And again, you can still see the goals to the left-hand side of the page there if you didn't get a chance to read through them.
Again, I have to apologize for not having been with this process through its inception and iterations, but I want, like, sometimes when I've worked on program evaluations or other kind of strategic planning, I guess it's a style difference, and I'm not sure, if this is just an overarching kind of like vision of like what we are and what we do, but frequently there's, measurables, so that when you look back, you can say, were we successful in our goals and what, and I'm sure this has been discussed already. So maybe somebody who's been in the process can help me understand it. What, if that's an important thing for us to do, or if it was determined that that isn't really the goal. The purpose of this document is to be able to look back and say, how did we do? Were our strategies, effective? How can we tweak those moving forward when we do our next strategic plan? And really, it's very difficult to measure, over time because conditions change so radically. So possibly that's not a useful purpose for this document. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Commissioner Smith. If I understand your question, is the intent of the strategic planning document to be able to have some things that are measurable so that you can use that as a kind of wayfinding to determine if your strategies are successful? Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, and really, it just occurred to me because of that first bullet point under outcomes, increase, a certain percentage over a certain amount of time. Oh, yes, okay, that's something that can be, looked at retrospectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll just speak as a member of the team. That's the outcome should do that. If we're not quite there yet, then let's I think Colleen mentioned we need to tighten them up still to make them smart, specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time bound. I think that's how the acronym goes. But so yeah, but that's a great piece of feedback, and it's a good lens for us to make sure before the final plan is produced that it's actually doing that. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. More thoughts, comments on this goal number 2? Hi, Gail, I see your hand.
Okay, perfect. So just a question, because we have adult basic ed GED graduates that we want to transition into higher ed, is that a different goal, or are they just not included?
That's a great call out. Thank you, Gail. Don't know if we can answer that today, but that's a really, really good call out to take back to the work group.
Okay, thanks.
And this is specifically for the outcome number 1. Is that correct?
Yeah, or even in the goal 2, when we talk about the seamless pathways to learners, I guess I just don't know where those adult basic ed GED graduates come in terms of any of our goals and how we account for them, because we want them also to have a seamless transition. They're part of our system. It's what we fund. So I don't know. I just throw that out because I look at them as sort of not necessarily high school graduates, but close to high school graduates.
Got it. Got it. Super helpful, Gail. Thank you so much. We'll make sure that this is discussed as part of the next iteration to see if we need to tighten up the language a bit to make sure that that is included. So thank you for that. Okay. Other thoughts, comments, feedback on goal number 2?
So I just have one other question.
Sure thing.
We're just talking about the public universities, right? Because we know that the curriculum transition continuum to privates are not sometimes easy for our students, especially if we're looking at dual credit or transferability of those dual credits into universities. But we're just focusing on our publics, right? We're not looking at private?
That is a really good question. I'm trying to recall if that was ever discussed. Anyone on the planning work group remember or recall if that was part of the discussion about this being focused only on public universities versus public and private? Anyone recall that conversation? Or if that conversation happened or not?
I don't think that conversation occurred. And it's something that we could take up in the planning team.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you jumping in. Gail, I think we've captured it there. Did we capture it correctly? If not, let us know and we'll make it better.
No, I think that's fine. It just occurs to me that that transition is not as easy if they go to privates.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate that. We'll let Colleen catch up and then we'll go to goal number 3, unless anyone has anything else for goal number 2. Okay, let's go to goal number 3. And this goal is all around affordable access, make success in post-secondary education and training affordable for all Oregonians. Take a moment to review the outcomes and strategies associated with this goal, and then we'll open it up for questions, thoughts, comments.
Madam Chair, whenever you have questions.
I see you at the front of the line.
Madam Chair, I can live with everything else in this that we've so far, probably even after this, but there's problems, I believe, significant problems with goal 3. Since I've been on the commission much longer than before I was on the commission, the issue with Oregon post-secondary education has been a decreasing level of support from the state for post-secondary institutions. It's been commented on in our own F&A meetings in the full commission that over the years we've dropped from covering about 50% of cost to 25% of cost. And we continue to put about almost 3/4 of the cost on students and their families. And so on this one thing on strategies growth investment in students, where it speaks specifically just largely to the issue of financial aid, I think that should be obviously kept and maybe even strengthened, but we have to put something in there that clearly indicates that we need to grow the state investment in post-secondary education support, funding support, because regardless of what you do, unless you somehow decrease our level of increase in tuition and fees, you are always going to have affordability issues. And I know that there's a constant discussion here about meeting the needs of the most needy. Well, I think there's also a lot of Oregon families that are in between the most needy and our modest number of people in the state that are have considerable incomes that simply just cannot afford college education for their students. So I think we need clearly something to recognize that there has to be an increase in post-secondary funding by the state. It is a little bit more acute for universities now than community colleges, but it's clearly applicable to both because it's happening in both areas. And we need a long-term commitment to get back to a more reasonable level of support. We have amongst the highest tuition in Western United States. We probably have one of the highest levels of annual increases in that tuition. We leave most of the institutions with either the choice of decreasing the value of their programs or putting more and more financial requirements on students and their families. And I don't know if the person that's doing this can do a short summary of that, but I think actually a short summary is to increase the state's investment in post-secondary education along with increasing financial assistance to those that need the financial assistance.
Thank you, Richard. Take a look at what Colleen has written and see if there's any way we can make it better, but appreciate your thoughts and comments and getting us started on this goal 3. We'll go Greg and then
looking at my notes and not seeing your notes.
Okay, we'll take a moment and look at it, and then if there's a way to improve it or make it better, please let us know. We'll go Greg and then we'll go Gail. Hi, Greg.
All right, thanks so much. I guess perhaps in response to a presentation we received an hour or so ago from our own Amy with regards to equitable affordability and our charge that we should be bold in the strategic plan, I'd like to at least consider that we change the word reduce unmet need to eliminate unmet need.
Great. Thank you, Greg. We'll give Colleen a moment to catch up and make sure she's got your comment adequately captured. Yep, I think that's it. Thank you. Anything else, Greg? Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Gail, I see your hand.
Well, on the strategies on that last one, I think we should, I don't know if those are two separate things, but it just doesn't feel specific enough. Fully and equitably resource institutions while collaborating to improve efficiency. I mean, are those two separate things? Or if they're not, I just need to have a better understanding what we mean there as a strategy.
Great. Thank you, Gail. Appreciate the feedback to help us make that better. Good feedback. Appreciate that. Others, feedback, thoughts on goal number 3, affordable access. Chair Rowe, oops, I saw your hand go up and then go down. Did you want to say something?
You're muted.
Yep.
Chair Rowe, you're muted.
And I'm just waving my hands and going on while I'm muted. Sorry, everyone. I don't want to jump too much on Gail's comment because I'm going to repeat part of it. But I do think that sentence is an illustration of somewhat throughout the document, there's still a fair level of bureaucratic language and sort of state government language. And to the extent as you go through again, I mean, I think what we were trying to say in that last one, my hunch is to get the equity in, and that we've got to have the resources, as Greg was saying, but we've got to improve efficiency. So it's sort of a backhanded way of saying we're not efficient enough, and then having these introductory things. But anyway, I would just like you to take a look. There's several things also in the vision or in the mission. There's kind of a pile up of verbs, but there's several places where it's still reading fairly bureaucratic.
Great. Thank you, Chair Rowe. So, Colleen, if you can just make sure that that last piece of feedback represents not only here, but also overall, to make sure that the entire document is kind of looked at through that lens. So appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. All right. I think we're ready to, oops, Chair Smith, I see your hand.
Sorry again. I'm wondering, that made me think, Chair Rowe's comments, who is the audience for this document? I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, so let me see if Ben wants to jump in and answer that. Ben, would you like to jump in and answer Commissioner Smith's question?
I would. Yeah, that's such a good question. So the audience for this includes at the heart, the commission and its staff, who will design work plans and priorities and policy proposals around the goals and the strategies that you establish through the plan. It also, though, I think really importantly, especially to the extent that it calls on greater participation by the legislature, the governor, institutions, et cetera. The audience is all of them.
Sure.
Because clearly some of what's described here can't be done by the commission alone. So the audience for this is at its heart, the commission, its staff, and the way it will drive those work plans. But it ideally is Oregonians writ large, and the lawmakers, the governor, and the institutions that represent and support them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And so I guess the language, it should be very easy to understand for, anyone who just happens upon it on our website or something. But for those action-oriented people like our staff and legislators, read within that the demand for action or that they have a mandate to enact some of this. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the feedback. And Ben, thanks for jumping in and answering that question. Colleen, let's go to goal number 4. Give everyone a moment to read it, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and discussion. So goal number 4 is all around belonging, elevate student voices and support inclusivity and learner belonging in all post-secondary learner settings. So take a moment to review this goal, the outcomes and strategies, and we'll open it up for dialogue and discussion. Colleen, let's go to the next slide. Who'd like to share their thoughts, questions, comments on goal number 4? Hi, Gail, and then we'll go Richard.
Well, these outcomes, I mean, they're very confusing to me. I can understand the strategies. Maybe it's just, I don't know. I think I understand what the outcomes are, but as I read them, they're very, it's like, well, people know what disaggregated student satisfaction is? Or in the outcomes number 2, what it seems to me we're saying here is that we want our student completer demographics to match the state demographics. Is that what we're saying? I guess these 2 outcomes are just not very clear to me.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the feedback, and thanks for getting us started on goal number 4. Richard, I think I saw your hand go up. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't have a specific change. I'm just wondering, and we do have several student representatives on the commission, but one of the things in terms of like elevate student voices is how do we make the commission relevant to students? I mean, if a few students come here and testify, if some students are actually organized here to testify, how do we actually make the work of the commission relevant to them? I mean, obviously they'd be looking for some evidence that they're heard. But I don't know if there are ways that we're thinking of how we could make it more relevant. Because I think a lot of times people always put things in documents wanting more participation, but you won't get the participation unless people believe they're being heard and that there's some benefit to them participating.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate your feedback. We'll go Rachel, then we'll go Greg. Go ahead, Rachel.
I kind of had maybe a response into what was just said by Commissioner Devlin. Maybe we could do like a meet the commissioners kind of thing, or meet the chairs, and giving students that opportunity in more centralized location to understand what it's like to be a commissioner, or how they can better help connect that distance and space. Because obviously I am a student, but I'm also a commissioner. But at the same time, people feel, other students feel like there's a disconnect, and like maybe they are welcome to participate in meetings when it comes to testimony, but not in any other less formal space. So coming up with those connections for a less formal space to get to know us and what the work we do and how they can help us.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate the suggestions. Greg, I see your hand.
Yep. I'm not sure, it has to do with strategies 1 and 2, and I'm not sure where it best fits, but in an effort again to be perhaps more bold, I would like to somewhere in there use the word agency, that we're giving the student voice. We don't just hear, but it actually has agency in the work that we do.
And that was specifically for strategies 1 and 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't
Did I hear
know
that
where
correctly?
best, you know. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that feedback. Who else has feedback? Rachel, do you have more feedback? I still see your hand. I want to make sure that I'm not missing something.
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Other feedback on goal 4. This is great feedback, everyone. Okay, Colleen, let's go to goal number 5. This is the last goal we're going to be asking for feedback on, and it's specifically around leadership, strengthen HECC's role in driving economic development in Oregon. So take a look at the outcomes and strategies for goal 5, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and discussion. Colleen, let's go to the next slide for thoughts, feedback, questions, comments on goal number 5, leadership, strengthening HECC's role in driving economic development in Oregon. Greg, I see your hand. Thanks for getting us started.
Yeah, good. We haven't done this yet, but the more I read this one, the more I like it. And so what do you like? I just want to put something in there. I think this is a powerful goal that perhaps hasn't been directly addressed in the past. And my only thing, if there's any opportunities to make the language even stronger, I'd be pretty excited. So.
Thank you, Greg, for getting us started. Gail, I see your hand.
I was going to say the same thing in terms of the goal, leadership. Instead of strengthening HECC's role, I think we could use something bolder than strengthening. You know, I think we want to be more central to the role or something.
Great. Thank you, Gail. Appreciate the feedback. Who else has got thoughts, questions for goal number 5?
Richard's got his hand up.
Oops, sorry, Richard.
Commissioner
Apologies. Thank you, Colleen.
I am not opposed to this, but I actually hate every time I see convene a statewide committee. Because to me, sometimes committees go along with the old saying of hours lost and minutes taken. But I was wondering if I was not part of any of this discussion, but was there any discussion beyond this committee about seeing how well we are integrated into existing entities that are working in these areas? I mean, do we have the role we believe we should have in some of these entities that are already working in these areas? I don't really underlying have a problem with another statewide committee, but there's nothing in here, I think, that speaks to what role we currently have.
Mm-hmm. It's a great call out. Thank you, Richard. Sandy, I see your hand. Oh, Chair Rowe, sorry.
Sandy is good. I agree. Excuse me. I agree with what Richard said. I think what we're trying to say here, in my sense as chair of this group and having been in other discussions, is that we are unclear as a state on who's leading economic development planning in Oregon, and that at least some entities appear to be. We know we have a central role, and it appears to us through some feedback, at least, that we should either be taking the lead there, or that we are the lead, or at least, as we say here, we're central to it. I also agree that this one is more specific and said more directly than some of the others, and I really admire it for that. But I think we can and should potentially sort of assert that a little bit more. I mean, and maybe it's as much as sort of saying, we're a key leader or driver, but kind of flipping that sentence on the outcome. I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but what we're doing here is really asserting our leadership of this and the need for our leadership, and how education is really the key link there. So if there is a way we're not really hedging it, I'm not saying that, but if there's a way to make it even more clear, I would appreciate that. And I also would like to call out this one for not having the bureaucratic language that tends to drag the others a little bit. So this is a good example of speaking in plain English in writing. And I realize in strategic planning, there's always this tendency to, oops, we forgot about this group of partners, so let's put an and in this sentence and add others. Or this isn't the only thing we're trying to achieve, let's put another and or a comma. And so again, I want this, when we finish the whole thing, I want it to stand out to people, but for its ambition, for its specificity and clarity, because most state agencies aren't very clear or specific, and for sort of how tightly stated it is. So if we can remember that, I'm sorry to keep beating that point in different ways, but I think it's important, because I think this is a shift for us, and it will be a shift for people who are used to reading 20-page strategic plans. So
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate that. Other thoughts, questions on goal number 5? seeing anyone else's hand, so I am gonna turn it back over to Colleen. And I just want to thank everyone for your very direct, candid, helpful feedback. That's what's making this process so helpful at this point, so that we can come back with the next version of the strategic plan and make it even better. Colleen, I'm going to turn it over to you for next steps.
Yep. And I just want to echo Susan's sentiments on thank you for the direct feedback. That's really helpful. If there are any other questions or anything else you'd like to add, please let Guthrie know and he'll send that feedback to us as well. So if anything comes to you later on, we certainly still want to hear it. As I mentioned earlier, the next step is we will finish up these feedback sessions. We've got one more this week, and then we will take this back to the core planning team for a revision session on September 9th. And so you will see a new version shortly after. So thank you again so much for having us as part of your meeting today. And thank you so much for your input. We really appreciate it. That does it for us. Thank you, Ben, too, and Chair Rowe for having us.
Thank you very much for all you've done and the care with which you're doing it.
Pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Well, that was pretty exciting to see the progress we've made. Again, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Emily, for all that you did to help make this happen. Get us this far. Are you both feeling good about it? Yes, Emily, please.
I'll answer that. Yes, I'm feeling really good about it. And I did want to just say, I tried to stay out of making comments since I've already had so much input into it. It was just really a pleasure to hear the feedback from the commission after being involved in the process of putting that together. So I really appreciate being part of the process and feel really energized by everyone's great care in responding to the elements that we came up with during the planning process.
No, thank you. Okay. Now we are moving to the item 10.0, Oregon Workforce and Talent Development Board Quarterly Report. Amazingly on time. Guthrie, are our guests here?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have promoted 2 of 3, still looking for Craig Pope, Janine Stice, and Kim Parker-Uranus. You should be able to turn on your mics and cameras now.
It's great. Thank you. I will, since Commissioner Pope is not here yet, I'll go ahead and get us started. Thank you all for the opportunity. My name is Kim Parker-Uranus. I'm the Executive Director at Willamette Workforce Partnership. We are the Workforce Development Board that serves the Mid-Valley. And we gave a presentation to the Workforce Talent Development Board a couple of months ago at the invitation of Commissioner Pope and their chair, Ann Mercereau. And it was so well received, it was suggested that we provide the same presentation to you all. So I would like to introduce Janine Stice now. She's going to take it away. And she is our Behavioral Healthcare Consortium Manager with our organization.
Thanks so much, Kim. And hello, everyone. I just want to go through a few slides that won't take a few minutes. And then if the opportunity presents for questions, we're happy to entertain those. Guthrie, would you like to advance the slide, please? Yeah, so Willamette Workforce Partnership raised up a behavioral health sector partnership in 2023, funded by Oregon Health Authority How-To funds. It's grown from about 40 members when it initially launched to about 120 members, reflecting 62 organizations in the last 18 months. The overriding goal is to increase the number and diversity of the behavioral health sector workforce in our region. Next slide, please. The consortium has really been built as a traditional sector partnership between the education entities that feed the sector's workforce and the employers in the region. And this encompasses really 3 CCOs, 4 health departments, the county health programs that employ in this space, as well as private sector, nonprofits, community benefit organizations, the school district, the community colleges, and then higher education entities. Next slide, please. The overriding objectives, I was interested to see your goals that you have as an organization as well, because they align with 4 and 5 that you really raised up today, and that is the need to increase the diversity and inclusivity in this sector, to expand the business access, particularly to the employers in the healthcare area and behavioral health that frequently are unaware that these funds exist. Many had not heard of the workforce partnership boards before the consortium and the sector partnership started. And then finally, to increase the training availability for the emerging healthcare workforce, really beginning in high school level all the way to people who have never been exposed or even thought of this as a career. To that end, I'd like to show the next slide, which is a 45-minute clip, and I'll explain how we got to this slide.
I'm sorry, were you able to hear that? I may have to include sound.
You're going to have to do that.
Yep,
Yeah.
just a moment.
And it's 45 seconds, just to clarify.
Yeah, it's very,
not actually
it's very
45
fast.
minutes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's fast.
The best thing about working in health is this feeling of purpose.
I knew that I was in the right field. I loved working with people.
You're committing yourself to a lifelong of learning something new every single day.
Nursing allows for more patient care and to be at the bedside more often, to really take care of my patients, get to know them and how I best can serve them.
I highly recommend it. If it's your calling to help somebody, this is the job for you.
My name is Purcell Sisto.
My name is Rachel Halen.
My name is Daniela Guerrero.
My name is Marcos Sanchez.
My name is Tammy Amon.
My name is Amy McQuiston.
My name is Harmony Forbes.
My name is Lisa Ladd.
My name is Dulce Venelt.
My name is Jose Hernandez, and we are the faces of healthcare.
Thank you. So that clip came about from actually funding to make 10 videos that were 3 minutes or less in length, so that you could expose people to these careers without having professionals have to come to classrooms or have people have to go places to have an interaction with these career paths. Because frankly, the bandwidth for professionals to leave their patients that are waiting months to get in was not there to go visit classrooms and such. And so these videos came up as a result of that work. We leveraged those videos and worked collaboratively statewide with Oregon Workforce Partnership to establish a behavioral health sector resource page that you can see with the barcode or the QR code. That was very exciting work. It integrated 3 workforce groups that have been working in this sector in the state, so that they would be highlighted and profiled on a statewide page. It includes links to the credentialing bodies as well as the licensing boards, and even includes the job search tool from Oregon Employment Department, so that people can search jobs statewide. And the best part about it was cost neutral, because the website and maintenance of it already existed. And so it really got developed with feedback from the work groups and what needed to be added to improve on it every month that they meet, to give feedback to the Oregon Workforce Partnership web developer to what to include or what to change out. That was an identified outcome that they wanted in the group, a website that people could go to and share across states and also statewide. And I'd like to go now to the third highlight from our work. There are many highlights, and these are only 3, but next slide. The last really fantastic home run really came after the consortium met. The principal of the CTEC school in Salem Kaiser was so excited about the employers in the area, they came together and created a CTEC behavioral health pathway, so that 2 years students receive the Qualified Mental Health Associate certification. The need for this program was huge. There were over 200 applicants for about 60 slots. It now has been the first group of students, I believe, graduated this last spring, and the program continues to grow and attract that many students. And we're working with Salem Kaiser to identify other pathways so that students that are not accepted into the program can find a way into this space to help Oregon. They want to help Oregon. So it's really been a beautiful thing to see. The last 3 slides I have really reflect the membership survey that's done every 6 months. So if you want to advance that slide, we ask the members, to how much this work has helped their organization and them individually. And we were getting traction in pretty much every area that the objectives were laid out to attract traction in. With the biggest return is really an increase in the awareness by students and job seekers with career fairs and also those videos, increasing participation in training, education, and supports. And then really exciting is the level of innovation on aligning programs across secondary and post-secondary career pathways. There's at least 2 new certification programs that are stackable. There's changes up at Portland State to make things more available and access non-traditional or students that need to work and go to school at the same time. So it's very exciting to see that amount of traction in just a short period of time. The last 2 slides, if you'd like to advance those, relate to what are the employers saying. So we brought employers back a year after the consortium launch to ask what works and what's not working. And we're really happy to say that the HECC funding for grants and things is a high point for most of this space. The ability to form new partnerships. There's so many grants applications that happen because of the network that happened within the consortium for your grant application processes. The diversity of the people in the room. The things that are difficult are the restrictions sometimes on the grants don't fit the type of organization that they are. Perhaps they're an employer that's in the private sector and they don't have a lot of bandwidth to make the relationships with others to figure out how to navigate the grant application process. The time length, how long they last, and sustainability after those grant funds run out is sometimes very difficult as well. And then finally, lack of reciprocity across state lines and also sometimes within the profession between credentialed work and licensed work. And then the last slide, or second to the last, if you advance that. The second question was increasing training availability to the emerging behavioral health workforce. And so the workforce partnership developed the behavioral health training grants that we had 13 applicants and then 3 went forward for work that way in our area. And then there's other workforce grants that have gone to train the Micronesian island community to become certified alcohol and drug counselors. So that's been a lot of traction in supporting training in addition to what I mentioned before. The things that aren't working that are difficult is not having enough trainers or even educators sometimes at the institutions, the lack of supervisors and the cost incurred on employers if they have supervisors because they are not seeing patients when they're supervising. And so that's a net loss for them when they free up space to supervise. And then limits on the number of people that can go into these pathways. Just example with CTEC, but it's at all levels. I think the number of people that want to go into this space and the lack of slots for those spots. And that's the end of my slides. Kim, if you want to finish with your slide, that'd be great.
Excellent. Okay, to the next slide, please. So we were asked to come with a recommendation or a request, the ask. And what I would say is that for the last several biennium, we have had a general fund investment into the industry engagement that the 9 local workforce development boards do around the state. And that is part of what is helping fund a lot of the supports that Janine just covered and discussed. And just assuring that that funding continues and potentially increases, I think, is the most specific and concrete way that the Higher Education Coordinating Commission can support our work. I'm happy to say that this funding is in the recommended budget, so it's not like we are here with a request that would be extreme. So just want to make sure that we can continue doing this work with that investment. And I see that Commissioner Pope has joined us. So Commissioner Pope, again, is a Polk County Commissioner and a member of the Workforce and Talent Development Board. Commissioner Pope, do you want to say a couple things?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, sorry I'm late. Had a little trouble logging in. And Chief Local Elected Official for Willamette Workforce Partnership, a 4-county workforce board this is a big deal. And also, as said, member of the Workforce Talent and Development Board, I'm going to continue to push for opportunities to have these kinds of presentations, both to WTDB and to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission as we go forward, because this is what our communities are asking us to do. So it's very important that we lean in and focus on how we can get these workforce boards the resources they need to do more of this kind of work. Thanks for the opportunity.
And if there are any questions, I don't know if we have time for questions, but if there are any, and if there is time, we'd be happy to take them.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much for bringing this presentation to us. We really appreciate it and appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, we have a 10-minute break. Everyone wants it. Not quite long enough to walk around the block, but you can step outside, and we will be back at 2:50 and ready to start with our last 3 items.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I got more people coming on. I got to be quick. I accidentally stood up, walked out. I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt and running shorts. But I forgot to turn off my camera.
We didn't get to see that, and it's okay. We'll take a pass.
Yeah. I'm comfortable.
That's good. You should be. That's what we all do in meetings.
But I forgot to turn off the video.
Sweats in winter and shorts in summer.
Yeah. Oh, yes. You were always in the big old Oregonian building, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
I really
great.
like the building, actually.
It was a wonderful building. They actually restored some of the original when they redid it, so that was good. Guthrie, will you let me know when all or most of the commissioners are back?
Well, I'd actually ask the commissioners to let us all know when they're back by turning their cameras on, as I can't tell aside from that.
And I'm waiting particularly for Commissioner Adams, who was on right before the break. And I'm going to move the agenda around just a tiny bit. If she is here.
While we wait, Chair, do you mind sharing what you were planning as far as moving the agenda?
I'm sorry. It's just going to be a minute or two. And you can text her if she's doesn't come on. I just realized mid-meeting that this is more than likely her last meeting, and I do not want that to pass without acknowledging her contributions. So whether it's at the end or whether I go between is fine. She's been on the whole meeting. But it's fine if she slipped away. I just ask her to come back on at some point. Thank you. Okie doke. Let's go on. I don't see her yet, so we're going to go ahead with Strategic Planning Activity 1, which is competency-based education, the legislative report. And Shiley Hodgson is here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Rowe and Vice Chair Heyman and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Shiley Hodgson, and I'm a policy advisor in the Office of Community Colleges and Workforce Development. And I'm really thrilled to be here today with my colleague Leslie Huntington from OHA to talk with you about this year's competency-based education report. Before we get started, just a disclaimer, Leslie is in one of those areas that's having some power outages. So if she's not able to jump in with us, I would request your sort of permission to bring her back at some point because she has some great information to share about the work she's been doing with our higher education institutions here in the state. So let's jump in. Today, our presentation will provide an overview of competency-based education, what it is, how it's defined in statute, the implementation of competency-based assessment in emergency medical technology programs across the state. And so many of our higher education institutions provide that training and are implementing this as a consortium. And we'll also, as we always do, talk about some of the barriers to implementing this work and some conversations we've had about measuring student outcomes, and then recommendations for you all to consider and for the legislature to consider. So I always like to start with the definition. This is how competency-based education is defined in statute. The definition, as many of you know, sort of encompasses the perfect example of competency-based education, where students can come in and accelerate at their own speed and finish courses and programs early, It is the Western Governors model that's really described here. And as many of you know, in Oregon, we have some challenges with implementing this in its pure form. But today's presentation really focuses on the assessments in a competency-based education program and how those are integrated into a program that follows the traditional 10 to 11 week term schedule.
Shelley, I don't see your slides.
Oh, shoot. Guthrie, you have the slides?
Yes, let me pull those up real quick.
All right, let's show the definition really quick since I'm sorry, I didn't realize people couldn't see it. And then let's move on to the next slide, please. So as we've been reporting on this and talking with you and the legislature, we have learned and know that competency-based education, as it's defined, is being implemented in a fairly limited way across the state or across programs of study or fields. And that has really changed in the last couple of years with the support of Leslie and the OHA working with HECC and the institutions to bring emergency medical services consortium together and start developing these competency-based assessments across emergency medical technician or technology programs, so the EMT programs. And so at this point, I'm really happy to turn this over to Leslie, who I'm happy to see your face, and let her jump into her slides and give you some details about the work that she has been doing with the institutions and moving this work forward. So.
Thank you, Shelley. It's good that my face is here. It's been a bit of a struggle with technology. Next slide, please. And I will introduce myself. I am the Emergency Medical Services or EMS Education Coordinator for the Oregon Health Authority EMS and Trauma Systems Program. And as part of our regulatory oversight, we set rules and provide technical assistance as well as oversight of initial EMS education. So this is just a quick overview of our education side of regulation. We have approximately 12,000 licensees. All of them obviously have to go through an initial education program. And in the state of Oregon, 4 of the 5 EMS provider levels that are regulated by our office actually run through a community college and through OHSU OIT. And on average, we run about 55 to 65 EMS provider courses per year of those 4 levels. And as part of the education piece, we also regulate the certification, the testing and certification side, and we work very closely with a national certification agency known as the National Registry of EMTs. And what we will do is we take their lead in deciding what kinds of examination processes that we will regulate and provide for our folks. Next slide, please. So we've had this relationship with National Registry for a while, and I can tell you that the practices that we've used, probably like most licensing agencies, have remained fairly stagnant. Even though the skills may change or the types of content we assess people changes, the basic format of standardized testing has not changed. And I can say this personally because I am a licensed paramedic for the last 25 years. I have gone through every level of EMS provider and have gone through standardized skills testing. So really the spur came from our national partners. They have, with technology changes and also with the changes in the research regarding competency, they are beginning to rotate their practices to look more at authentic verification of practice. And so that is shifting their practice from creating and developing and requiring standardized skill testing to a state-approved competency verification program. And so with those shifts, obviously, we needed to do some changes ourselves. So the changes for National Registry began in 2021. They're doing different rollouts at different times with these different levels of EMS provider certifications. And so we're trying to keep in step with that. So for the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years, I've been engaging with the EMS Education Consortium to ask what we wanted to do for skills verification and what kind of values we wanted to bring into the process so that we could assure that what we are trying to teach our students to become is validated from a state testing standpoint. And I think we've been able to do that with the CBA program. So I'm excited to say that most of the groundwork is done, a lot of the foundational work is done, and we are looking for an official launch of our CBA program in January of 2025. And that is going to be in line with the last of the rollouts of skill competency verification with the National Registry. Next slide, please. So I can say we have learned a lot. You know, we started with the assessment piece of it, but in all reality, competency-based assessment and competency-based education are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. And what we've discovered is that that means we are not only changing our competency verification practices at the state and our rules and regulations that go with that, but we've really had to change everything from course outcomes, student outcomes, course schedules. I mean, the whole system has had to change with this. And so these were the three big areas that we really had to focus on. And again, laying this foundational work so that we could do the competency-based assessment. First and foremost is because competency-based assessment and education are two sides of the same coin, we really had to focus on course design and to make sure that people were setting up their courses in a way that could incorporate our statewide outcomes so that the grading of those outcomes, again, could be in line with modern assessment practices. Also, we're not used to formally assessing some of the softer skills of competency, if you will, things like communication and scene leadership and scene management. And so that was a new thing that we've all had to sort of wrap our heads around. So we've also had to do a lot of instructional development to help people learn how to assess those things and develop the forms so that they can assess those things with the modern frameworks of assessment that are out there. And then from our perspective as a state office, you know, we've been used to doing prescriptive skills testing. And so we've had to take some major logistical shifts ourselves, including rule changes to include more of quality improvement processes so that we can assist programs in making the competency-based education and assessment more effective. And the last major change, and this was actually, I think, one of the easier aspects of change, was embedding this competency-based assessment and education idea into an existing college structure. The course design was a bit challenging, but we had no issues really when our instructors and program coordinators went to their curriculum committees. The assessment folks at the colleges were very interested in what we were doing and were actually trying to collaborate with us to embed some of our statewide outcomes as part of a college-wide outcome. So that's been very exciting to see. Next slide, please. So I think the largest change for all of us has been, you know, is there more than standardized testing? And the answer is yes, but that information is not readily available. So we really had to dig deep and find the research and put all the parts and pieces together. And the takeaways from this for myself and for the instructors is that we have no problem with the competency-based assessment and education idea. It's something that we've been wanting because standardized testing just does not allow for the holistic evaluation of competency. But then when we had to put this into practice, this is when a lot of our assumptions about testing and competency verification really got in the way. And I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to work through even when this program was officially launched in January. What we did find is that the students were generally very receptive. They liked, by and large, they liked the format. There was far more student-centered activities. Students could participate in the learning process. They could even participate in the assessment process. And they could even see their progress with some of the learning management systems. They could actually watch their progress as they continued to the course. And in some cases, they were more involved in wanting to become more competent in certain areas, far more than what a traditional grading scale was offering them. So that was very exciting to see. And again, as I said, from an administration standpoint, it was rare to find an administrator that didn't like this program. So that was good to see. Next slide. So the challenges that we faced is that this was a very short timeline. We've had to completely restructure our system of EMS education. And so there was a lot of work that had to be done, a lot of research that had to be done in a very, very short time frame. And with that, we were having to do professional development as we went. And I don't think that's ideal. So we are going to continue to do more professional development with our instructors as this new system is being implemented. Like I said, we did something a little bit above and beyond competency-based education, and that is that we needed to come up with an assessment program that we could defend because we're using these decisions for licensure. And so that required even more research and actually getting into other disciplines to determine how we can set up a system of assessment that could be defended. And I think that's a learning curve for any other licensing body or any other career technical education program that's looking to implement a CBA program for licensing. And then the other hurdles that we faced, which weren't quite as large as we did find operational silos. People were very interested in working with this, but then this is when we found that the Centers for Teaching and Learning and the e-learning folks maybe didn't quite come together in the ways that we needed to for competency-based assessment. So we began to build relationships with each other so that we could build off of what a learning management system can offer and how we can build those learning management system or those courses within those learning management systems with the foundational truths of adult learning. Again, I think the traditional style of teaching is something that is a bit of an issue. We have to think about education much differently with competency-based education and assessment. And that was always something that we had to address at every phase of the foundational work and implementation. And then from my perspective as a regulator, getting away from something that's very standardized, something that is very distant in terms of the things that we're assessing for the sake of, again, defensive decision-making, it was hard to think of a different way of doing that. It's in the literature, it's in research, you can use different ways of doing it, but it felt like it was a big risk for us because we just had never done it that way. So again, I think a recommendation that I would give to any program that wants to implement competency-based assessment for some kind of credentialing really has to dig deep into these different assessment processes to build a system. And of course, that's also going to bring in more professional development for administrators and regulators like myself. Last slide. The great part about this, though, is that this is something that I think we've always wanted as educators, and I can speak to this from my own practice. I am a licensed paramedic. I have been an educator of EMS education classes and also a regulator. And standardized testing never really got our students to a place where they could truly show their skills as an authentic entry-level provider. And I think what CBA does is it narrows that gap and it honors the work that we're doing in our classes and allows students to really know if they're at a place that they can go out and work in the field. And right now, with all of our workforce issues, that's imperative. We need to get our students out the door because they're going to start working on an ambulance or they're going to start getting into a community and they're going to start running calls. And we have to make sure that they're ready for that. And it's only fair to them as well, I might say. What I've also found for all of us is that this has been a very transformative experience. There's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of old practices that we've clung to, myself included. And it's actually been quite liberating. Once we get past these learning curves, I've seen tremendous enthusiasm from our instructors, just wanting to try things differently and to really begin to design courses that are really based upon the principles of adult learning. And it's showing in the classes. And I think the students are very receptive to that. And what I think is really great about the CBA program is that it's creating new opportunities for us. We used to look at EMS education in sections. You took your EMT course and then you went to your AEMT course and you had to start everybody from scratch every time. And I think what CBA does, and especially CBA or CBE will do, is it will allow us to be more flexible and to feel more confident in the flexibility that we can take in adjusting our courses and adjusting our content to meet students where they're at.
Thank you. Oh,
go ahead.
Chair Rowe, I have a couple more slides, Chair Rowe, just to wrap us up. We Leslie did a really great job of talking about the barriers to competency-based assessment. And I've shared for a couple of years now that our biggest challenge to competency-based education in general is the way higher education is funded in Oregon, and the structure of the 10 to 11, 12-week term. But that's also what I found in the conversations I had with faculty. That's also a bit of a gift to the students, because as a student is going through the competency-based assessment piece in their EMT program, they're getting really ready to test early. Like, they're ready, in this case, by week 5 of a 10 or 11-week course. And then they spend the rest of the time with the instructors and their fellow students practicing how to become an EMT, how to be a good EMT, how to be a good employee and a good partner. And so I really appreciated that faculty member at Schmeketa kind of turning that challenge around to an opportunity. So Guthrie, let's go to the next one really quickly. So these, again, this is just the funding that's sort of a challenge, but let's go to the next slide, which is my last one. And I did want to share that we have struggled to measure student outcomes for competency-based education because it's been difficult to identify where this is happening. Last year, I shared a couple of examples of welding programs that are doing open entry, open exit. And so we could identify those programs and potentially measure some outcomes. This year, knowing what the EMS consortium was doing, we had a great conversation between our office and Amy Cox in the Office of Research and Data about what was possible. And these programs don't necessarily check a box in any data system that they're doing competency-based anything. But now that we know that these programs specifically are using this model, we can compare sort of before and after. And then another thing that Amy suggested that I thought was a great idea was to sort of bring institutional researchers, faculty, and administrators together to talk about what data collection and reporting might look like going forward with this particular model, but then as other competency-based education programs are identified. And so I was excited about that possibility of being able to provide some student outcomes in the next couple of years and start to show what maybe the differences are. So those are the recommendations. So now we're ready for questions.
Okay. And Shali and Leslie, I want to thank you both for this presentation. I was so excited when I read this report, and it just seems so smart that we started with the EMT, and to learn the number of students and certificates that are going through. But I was just so pleased how you approached it, and that where the testing could come in. And then, as you say, they're practicing to become really good EMTs. So thank you. I think it's a wonderful example. I really hope you have the support you need, Shali, to help us take this forward, because this is just a clear example of a good idea that we not have to make sure that the existing systems don't kill. So thank you. And Commissioner Heyman, this is an action item for us folks when we're ready. Commissioner
Thank
Heyman.
you so much. Thank you so much, Chair Rowe. Just a quick question. First, I wanted to second Chair Rowe's comments. I think this is a wonderful step forward in understanding of how students can learn and receive credit or certificate. And I appreciate your comment that perhaps in the vast majority of cases, CBE and CBA are opposite sides of the same coin. But I can at the same time anticipate opportunities where assessment may be an appropriate approach to a person who has not participated in any sort of formal learning experience provided by us. And I'm wondering, to the extent of which you are anticipating that or thinking about that as you think about the scope of CBE.
I can go first. So Commissioner Heyman, I did have some great conversations with faculty about this model as they're implementing it. And we have, Leslie has a few early adopters who have actually created the assessments and are using them. And the faculty shared that the students really liked the model. They were really able to embrace it. If the fear of testing is kind of taken out of the equation for folks who have struggled with that. And it seemed to be a more approachable model for some students. Some students just we're fine either way. But there was definitely an advantage for some. And so, Leslie, I don't know if you have any other insights on that.
Yeah, so the assessment piece that we're implementing is to verify that they have a level of minimum competence to be able to in a way get the blessing to be able to get certification and licensure. So it seems like it might be a little bit different than the question that you're posing. I will say that because assessment and education are two sides of the coin, I think how we approach a student when they're coming in with informal training and validating that and figuring out a way to implement that student and that skill set into a class. I think this model does provide a red carpet, if you will, for those discussions and for those assessments to take place. And I think by and large, what I've learned is that we do a really great job with the education piece, but if you want your assessments to be credible and defensible, I should say, is that you have to be more assessment literate. And I think that's something that if you want to move forward with something that's like a CPL, or if you're trying to bring people in who have less traditional learning behind them, then I think you have to have a solid assessment system in place so that when you make a decision about that individual, and again, from my perspective as for state licensing, that you have to have a process that you can then say, this is a very credible process that we can use to make these decisions of yes or no.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it does hinge on a credible assessment model, which again, we're not as good at as we are in the education side. So thank you.
I was on mute. I said, thank you. Can we have a motion to approve the report, please?
I move to approve.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second, thank you very much. All in favor indicate by saying aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, commissioners, before we go to the last two items, I'm going to put a pause on the agenda for a minute because there's something I don't want to miss. And I know when we get to the end of the agenda, especially after this long a meeting, that there's the tendency to leave the meeting. I realized kind of mid-meeting or later, looking at the screen and seeing all you, that this might be Commissioner Rakaya Adams's last meeting. And I'm not sure if it's going to be, but in case it is, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to thank you and to share with the commissioners a little bit of what you're doing. We are all busy people, but I'm telling you, there is nobody among us who is any busier or doing more critical work than Rakaya Adams. She's been a commissioner for, I think, almost 3 years. She is leaving us only because the governor has appointed her to the Oregon Port Authority, where her expertise is desperately needed. We would say not any more than it's needed here, but in any event, she can't juggle both the commission jobs at the same time. Rakaya, if you don't know, and for newer commissioners, Rakaya, I have the privilege of serving with Rakaya on the OPB board, Oregon Public Broadcasting, where she is the chair. She was the lead chief investment officer for Meyer Memorial Trust for quite a few years and broke every record they had ever had on their investments to help people. And now she's the founder, CEO of the 1803 Fund, which is really all about bringing both private investment and public investment into a shared prosperity, really, for neighborhoods and for places that haven't had it. And specifically what they are doing, if you're in Portland or near Portland, you know about this, is they are going to revitalize the Alberta community, which was really leveled during 50s, let's pave over everything and create highways. But she brings so much expertise and so much range of thought to everything she does. I was struck from the first meeting on when Rakaya came to us as a commissioner, but I felt like I was asking questions, oh, I don't know, at the 500-foot level that matter sort of on the ground. And Rakaya operates at this 30,000-foot level. So she's always thinking ahead and seeing the potential implications of something. And we have benefited so much from that, Rakaya. And I am so grateful to have your organizational leadership experience, your financial expertise, and your passion. Rakaya was born in Portland, right? I mean, she could be anywhere, and she chooses to be in Portland and to help make Oregon better. And she has sure helped make this commission better. And I can't thank you enough. And I wanted to make sure, and please, if you're not off the commission by the September meeting, come back.
Well,
But
you know,
mostly I
I
wanted to make sure I had this chance to thank you.
thank you, Chair Rowe. I appreciate it. So gracious of you. I don't know what the timing will be on my replacement, but I will say that for the years I've been on the commission, I've learned so much. I thought I understood industrial policy, but I clearly didn't understand education. I had no idea how much time and thought, care went into our educational systems and degrees, and the advocacy that this commission has shown has really been astounding. I have to read the materials twice to understand what you guys are doing. It's all new to me, so I feel like I'm hustling to keep up with you most of the time. But I've loved my time. I'm here anytime, Chair Rowe, if you want to talk about math. The rest of it I'm not so good at. So we'll see. I don't know what the timing will be on replacing me, but I will serve until the governor finds someone to replace me on the commission.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will definitely call on you, and it's about a lot more than math. And in fact, if you don't have math, if you don't have the money, you don't have the policy or the progress that we need. So we understand that. Okay, thank you very much. And we'll go back to our last two agenda items. We need to approve the Public University Educator Equity Plan. And I think that's Veronica Dijon.
Chair Rowe, yes, Veronica Dijon is on a flight. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And so I'll introduce our panel. They're all here, and they will share with you their work in Ashland, Southern Oregon. Greetings. Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Hammond, Commissioners. My name is Erin Weeks-Earp. I'm a policy specialist in Veronica Dijon's team in the HECC Office of Academic Policy and Authorization. I'll welcome our guest from Southern Oregon University. Jessie Longhurst is here. She's Chair of Education and Interim Co-Director of the School of Education Leadership, Health, and Humanities at Southern Oregon University. Kenwani Kravitz is here. She's the Native Nations Liaison for Southern Oregon University. And Daniel Denui, Associate Provost and Director of Graduate Studies at Southern Oregon University. Before the panel begins, I'll provide a few notes for context. This is the last of the 6 public university educator equity plans to be approved for the 2024-2026 period. This is an action item, so at the end we'll hopefully vote, and staff recommends this updated plan for your approval today because it meets the minimum criteria in the 4 areas that we co-developed with our partner agencies and the public universities. Those 4 are that the plan is responsive and partners with school districts in the region. It describes culturally sustaining candidate experiences. It implements state and national accreditation standards, and it strengthens the evidence base and uses multiple forms of evidence for goal setting and for continuous improvement. So SOU had this extension of our spring timeline due to staff and leadership changes at the School of Education specifically. The commission did hear university testimony on the educator equity plans in May and in June, if you remember, from our leaders in the universities, and you did already approve the 5 other plans in June. Last note, we'll probably hold questions until the end of the panel, so we give them enough time, and they each have about 5 minutes, hopefully still. And I'll turn it over to Jessie. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Commission, for seeing us. I will actually hand it to Dan for a moment to do brief introductions and to get us started. I'm not sure if we're able to share slides. If not, that's fine. We can forge ahead without. So Dan, I will hand it to you for the first moment.
Thanks, Jesse, and thank you, Commissioners. As Erin mentioned, I'm Dan Denai, Associate Provost and Director of Grad Studies, and I just wanted to extend my thanks to Erin for all of her help in, granting us the extension, helping us, walking us through the process, and providing feedback on the drafts. As she mentioned, we did have some turnover. And so we're grateful for the opportunity, and it's I'm also grateful to my team members. And this is particularly relevant for me. I'm an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe in South Dakota, so it's very important to me personally, but more so to our students and the potential students that we hope to bring to campus. And Jesse, did you want to say anything? You want to introduce yourself and Kanwani?
Sure. My name is Jessie Longhurst, and as Erin said, I'm Chair of Education and serving in an interim role as co-director of our School of Education Leadership, Health and Humanities at SOU. Teacher education is close to my heart. I'm a former high school teacher. I'm a former rural high school teacher and a rural kid, and we'll talk about why this matters to rural Oregon. But I'll let my colleague Kanwani Kravitz introduce herself as well.
Hello, my name is Kanwani Kahi Kravitz. I am the Native Nations Liaison for Southern Oregon University. I am also an enrolled member of the Pit River Nation and a descendant of the Northern Wintu of Northern California. Today, my colleagues and I are joining you from the homelands of the Shasta, Tacoma, and Latgawa peoples and their living descendants, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, Oregon, and Siletz Indians. And like Dan, this is something that's very close to my heart as well, being a Native person, having experienced many barriers myself in my own personal education. Yeah, so I will turn it back over to Jesse. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So we this is the most recent incarnation of SOU's Educator Equity Plan. In the past biennium, we had a broader focus on culturally and linguistically diverse educator candidates in general. We had peer navigation coaches, we facilitated culture circles, there was a culturally responsive teaching innovation community, and we did hire a liaison briefly for our education programs to tribal communities. And in this incarnation, in the next biennium, we are looking to narrow our focus a bit and to really focus our efforts on increasing the number of Native American and Alaska Native teacher candidates at SOU. So if we can, I'm not sure, let's see if the slides are visible and advancing. I can't really see them in my view. Is everyone else seeing the slides or no? Okay, great. So I will advance, and Dan, maybe if you would like to go from there.
Thanks. I'm managing my microphone here. One of the things that I think the progress that we've made, and it's notable, and Kanwani's on the Zoom or the Teams call with us today, is that we've hired a Native Nations liaison, and that role, I think, will, while it's not specific to education, she has already started paving the way with our tribal partners, and that work will pair very nicely with one of the key pieces of our plan for this next biennium, which is to hire a Pathways for Native Educators coordinator. And I think the pairing of Kanwani with that person will help to build those relationships with our tribal partners. As you can see, we did make some progress in the enrollment of our culturally and linguistically diverse students, increasing from 33 to 42%. Obviously, the largest increase was those students who identify as multiracial. We did mention some of these. I don't want to focus too much on this, but we had significant turnover. Our grant PI changed several times. And at the time when it was critical when we were writing this, we also lost the director or dean of our School of Education. Jesse has graciously stepped in as their interim, but we're in the process of searching for that role right now. And so that brings you to me as in my role and with this this grant application. Jesse or Kenwani, this is next slide, please. There we go.
So SOU's committed to serving our Native students. And as you can see, these are some of the activities and support services that we offer to our Native students, everything from government to Native initiatives. And they have access to all these resources and different events here on campus. However, most of these events are on campus and are focused toward our undergrad students. So we really have realized that we need to do a better job to make sure that our graduate students and distance learning students feel like they're a part of our community here at SOU and within the Native student community as well. And so we also ultimately want them to become teachers and serve Native communities as well. So thank you.
So that leads us to our focus goal for the next biennium, which is to recruit Native educator candidates. And to do that, we're going to need to develop and sustain trusting relationships with tribal nations and with Indigenous students. Our rationale for this is there's several pieces to that. The first of which is obviously the underrepresentation of Native educators in the teaching workforce. Just about 1% of teachers in Oregon identify as Native American Alaska Native, and that's not enough. And our plan aligns with Oregon's American Indian Alaska Native Student Success Plan for 2020 to 2025. And so we feel like it's a natural fit. And given that we are a university in a rural area, the rural educator shortage is something that is really front and center for us as a teacher prep program, educator preparation program. And the rural educator shortage is especially acute in Native and tribal communities in rural Oregon. At SOU, we are undergoing a pretty ambitious shift to providing distance access to our licensure programs via remote technology as well as in-person classes more traditionally. We're really committed to improving access and removing barriers to becoming licensed teachers. Increasingly, we serve students who cannot commute to the SOU campus. Our region is broad, everywhere from the Central Oregon coast to the California border, all the way to communities southeast of the Cascades. During the 2023-2024 school year, TSPC tells us that there were 428 teachers on restricted or emergency licenses in the 6 counties surrounding SOU. And of those, only 124 of them could have reasonably driven to Ashland. So obviously distance matters. And so we think our distance accessible model not only has the potential to support rural students in general, but really specifically our Native students who may wish to become teachers, but may not wish or be able to move to the Rogue Valley. We do that in partnership with our community college partners. We have excellent articulation agreements in existence with our community college partners. The major transfer map in education is one of the most successful in that project, so we feel really good about that. And we understand that for our Native students, familial and community connections matter, cultural connections matter, and being able to complete your educator education in your own community can really strengthen tribal communities and can strengthen the relationships between SOU and those communities. Our primary strategy for this biennium to facilitate this is going to be to hire a Pathways for Native Educators coordinator. And this person will help us build a supportive pipeline into teaching for Native educators that will require that trust building I mentioned, And it will also require getting the word out about SOU's pathways to licensure, particularly those available at a distance. They'll host community outreach events. They'll connect with community colleges and school districts to meet with prospective students and school administrators, et cetera. And then also will provide, will facilitate the entry into SOU for our students, mitigating institutional barriers, shepherding students through admissions and financial aid, making sure that scholarships and funding opportunities at SOU and at the state level are front and center for those students, that they know about them, that they have help applying, that they know what they qualify for. And then assisting with managing the intersections between family and work and school obligations, which for our adult learners who are perhaps not in that traditional college age, who may have children of their own, who are probably working full time, that really matters. And then helping us with that data collection piece, following our students from recruitment all the way through to eventual licensure. And then our secondary goal has to do with the redesign of our Master of Arts in Teaching program that we're undergoing. And one element of that redesign is to include a required course for all of our teachers in Oregon's Tribal History, Shared History curricular requirements. In the Comprehensive Center Network reported in 2023 that only 14% of Oregon teachers surveyed were aware of tribal history, shared history, either being piloted or implemented in their schools. And 56% said their teacher preparation programs didn't prepare them to do that work. So we know we can do better. And so we're redesigning our MAT program to include this course. And part of this educator equity plan is to make sure that that happens. We see it as tied to our focus goal of recruitment and retention of Native educators, but also it really importantly, it dovetails with the imperative to prepare all Oregon educators to meet the requirements of tribal history, shared history legislation. And I will hand it over to Dan to talk about our process of drafting and revising this plan.
Yeah, and, I've alluded to this before, but back in the spring, we recognized that we had some challenges with our original draft. And so with the help of Aaron, we worked to revise that. And at the time we were working with our previous director or dean of the School of Education. And when he announced that he was leaving, Jesse and I kind of picked up the reins from there. And we decided that we needed to do a pretty significant revision. And so what you're seeing is basically an entirely rebuilt application. And I'm incredibly grateful for her help because she stepped in to help with this while, running the School of Education and teaching a pretty full-time load. And Kenwani has just been super helpful with adding to this and making edits to the plan. And we're very grateful to the HECC for and to Aaron for helping us through this process. Really, truly couldn't have done it without that assistance. We do feel confident that the team we've assembled for this new revised grant application has positioned us well for success. And I know that I and my team members are very excited to get working on this. So my sincere gratitude, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you all. Commissioners, this is another action item. Do you have questions or comments before we move forward to a vote? I'd just like to say this was another really exciting report to read and see what you were doing. And so much of what you presented demonstrated the need and the importance. Nothing more than the one sentence that said that more than 400 of the teachers in the region either are on provisional or temporary certificates. So that was just astounding. And clearly getting the education to them is crucial to trying to get those numbers up and making teaching appealing and the right career for many more Native participants. So thank you. Thanks again, and thanks for how far you've gotten with this. If there are no questions, then we'll move for a vote. Please, this is a report to be submitted to the legislature.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion is approved and the report will be submitted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one last item, and it will be quick because we don't have all of the information, or I think it will be quick. It's the action item on sexual misconduct reporting, the annual report. The last 50 or 60 pages of your agenda. And there's Rowan Frost.
Commissioner Rowe, members of the commission, thank you so much for having me here this afternoon. I have some slides prepared, but in the interest of time, I think it might be better if I simply kind of give you an overview of where we are with the report and then answer any questions that you have. This report is required by ORS 350, 335 to 346, which is the House Bill 3456. Amended by House Bill 4164. That law was passed last January. This is the first year of implementation. It has a lot of requirements for the institutions, and the HECC is responsible for helping to implement that and sort of monitor the implementation of it. The report that I prepared was based on requests that I had submitted to the institutions that are affected by the law. It was completely voluntary. They didn't have to respond. The fact that several of the institutions did not respond, actually quite a few, shouldn't be seen as inference that they did not comply or did not try to implement the law, but there is a lot of missing data there. I just want to say that up front. I have received already some feedback, and I really appreciate everything that folks have said. I believe that there could be some edits made to the report that would help clarify that it really wasn't more about compliance this first year, but more about just implementation and that it's serving as a baseline for future years. But if there are any specific questions, I can certainly answer those.
Questions for Rowan? That's a key distinction that she's pointing out. That I did not realize when I first read it, because my question was, wow, why are so many institutions not reporting? So this is not the required phase yet. And have you found out, have you had enough feedback to understand if the way it is being reported is helpful and if that is what you're going to need as it is required?
I believe that the information that we're requesting is important. I think that there's a lot of, the law was not finalized until March of this year, which is almost the end of the academic year for a lot of folks. So timing was not really great. And we have not begun the rules making process yet, which will be happening very soon. I believe that's going to be happening this month, and that'll provide a lot more clarity for the institutions, and we'll be able to hear from their concerns. I know that there are a couple of things that people have already let me know are kind of challenging for them in implementation, and we will be trying to help them as much as possible address those issues. For example, the law asks them to have a memorandum of understanding with a local community-based agency that provides sexual and domestic violence advocacy. Those agencies are often understaffed and underfunded, which is kind of a theme I think today. And so there have been some challenges getting those memorandums of understanding in place, for example.
Thank you. That's very helpful. If there are no other questions, can we have a motion to approve the report?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. And thank you for condensing your detailed report and giving us that overview. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. If anyone wants more information, please feel free to contact me or
Exactly. You
Captain
know where to
Kemper, the
go
admin
now.
assistant. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, commissioners, is there any more business to come before the commission today? This was a really big and productive meeting in terms of the things we care most about. And I thank you for not just your attendance and attention, but the questions you asked and the concerns you raised and the level of engagement in this meeting. So it's been a long one, I know, but it was very worthwhile. So thank you very much. You're free now. Right on time. How did that happen?
Thank you, Chair Rowe.
Excellent. Good predicting on the part of Guthrie. Thank you, Guthrie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.